I do want to add a quick note that if you ever perform this song, pay your accompanist well. It is a beast to play. Oh, you don't have enough fingers and hands to play this sucker. Oh my gosh. It's a pain. It's a beast. It's a nightmare. And anybody who is brave enough to actually try this deserves so much money and praise and gifts and flowers and chocolates and candy. If there is one thing I wish more people knew about classical music, but specifically vocal classical music, I wish that they could understand the lyrics of what is being sung. This usually doesn't work out so well because a lot of classical music is in a foreign language of some kind because, surprise, surprise, most of Europe doesn't speak English. And if you don't speak any kind of foreign language, and especially to the level of being able to translate and understand lyrics as they're being sung, then you're gonna have a barrier to entry to understanding a lot of the vocal music that's performed prior to, like, say, the mid-20th century or so, roughly speaking. So I've decided that I kind of want to start a little ongoing segment throughout this channel called What the Heck Are They Singing?, where I will take one piece at a time and kind of go through the lyrics and talk about the background of the song and translate it for modern audiences such as yourself. We'll go through a little bit of the history, we'll go through the lyrics of the songs, we'll go through any kind of relevant stories that may come up, and fun little information and facts that may come along the way. So today, we're gonna start with Der Erlkönig by Franz Schubert. I chose this song because we've started the month of October, as you can obviously tell, and October generally means spoopy season. And like many other people, I have a little bit of nostalgia for spoopy season. It's kind of fun, it's kind of enjoyable, and this song really fits that beautifully. So without further ado, let's start to dive into this song and get into the details of what's going on. So, Der Erlkönig, what does that mean? What is the title? What does that mean? Der Erlkönig, or the Erlking, is kind of like this mystical spirit. So think of it as like sort of like the king of like the fairy creatures. It's not really specified in the song or the original poem from which this comes from as to what exactly he is, what he looks like, where he comes from. None of his background is really explained. He's just sort of this mystical spirit that appears in the middle of the woods late at night. The original poem by the same name, Der Erlkönig, comes from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who wrote a wide variety of poems and ballads, but among his ballads, this one is probably one of the most famous, and has been set to tunes by a variety of composers, but the most famous one is the one that's done by Franz Schubert. Now, Schubert's setting of the song doesn't come from any kind of opera or any kind of song cycle. It's more of a standalone aria that one might sing just in a studio or in a home and for friends and family. It's a solo piece written for voice and piano accompaniment, but just by using those two elements, Schubert incorporates so much symbolism that really helps to tell what's going on in this story. So what exactly is going on in this story? Well, you've got four big characters that appear. Technically even a fifth one, but we'll talk about that in just a sec. So the first one is the father. There's a father who's riding on horseback in the middle of the night trying to get home. With him on his horse is his son, who he's kind of holding on the horse in front of him as he's riding through these woods. The third character is the Erlkönig, who kind of appears in the middle of the night and is seen by the son, but can't be seen by the father. And the fourth character is the narrator, who's telling the audience this story and kind of explaining what's going on. The singer takes on all four of these roles. When it's traditionally performed, the singer is expected to kind of hold themselves in a different way or kind of show on their face which character they're supposed to be representing in that moment. Schubert also did a really nice job of putting each of the four characters in a different register of the singer's voice. So, for example, the son is going to be in a much higher register and use higher notes than, for example, the father, who is in a much lower register. Now, that fifth character I talked about, where is that fifth character? It's not sung by the vocalist. It's actually taken up by the accompanist on the piano. It starts off right away at the beginning of the song, and it's the horse. You hear it in the triplets, da-da-la, 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 all throughout the whole song. Now, if you listen carefully to the whole thing, you'll notice that kind of triplet pattern disappears when the Erlkönig sings. That's because we're kind of fading away from the reality of the father and son on the horse in the middle of the woods, and we're kind of getting that view of the Erlkönig that the son is seeing as they're riding through the night. But what actually happens in this story? What's going on? Let's dive more into the lyrics. So I'm going to start by reading off one line of the original text and then kind of translating it for you and giving you context as to what's going on. So the first line starts off, Wer reitet so spät durch Nacht und Wind? So this is the narrator talking, and he's telling the audience, setting up the story for them, saying, who's riding so late through the night and the wind? Es ist der Vater mit seinem Kind. It's the father with his child, like I said before. Hat den Knaben wohl in dem Arm. He has the boy in his arms. So they're riding through the night, they're on the horseback, and he's holding the boy in his arms. Fasst ihn sicher, hält ihn warm. So he holds him closely, he's holding him warm. He's taking care of him, bringing him home. Then we switch to the father's perspective. Mein Sohn, was birgst du so bang dein Gesicht? So, my son, why are you hiding your face away in fear? Then we quickly switch over to the son. Siehst Vater du der Erlkönig nicht? Father, don't you see the Erlkönig over there? So still the son, der Erlkönig mit Kron und Schweif. So the Erlking, he's got a crown and he's got a tail. These are one of the few describing features we have of the Erlking in this story. We just know he's a king, so he's got a crown, but he's also got a tail, which is kind of interesting. What kind of tail? I'm not really sure. It never brings it up again, but it's interesting that Goethe put it in this poem. So then we go back to the father. Mein Sohn, es ist ein Nebelstreif. So my son, it's just a streak of fog. So it's foggy out here in this woods too. So they're going through the woods late at night, it's super creepy, and there's fog out. And the son is seeing what he's calling the Erlking off in the distance somewhere. Ooh, spooky. Then we switch over to the Erlking. The son has mentioned the Erlking, but clearly the father can't see him. So what is this Erlking there for? What is he trying to do? We hear his next line here. Du liebes Kind, kommt geht mit mir. You lovely child, come with me. So he's trying to be nice to this boy. He's trying to call him over while he's riding with his father. So it's not entirely clear right now what he wants with the boy. He just is kind of trying to bring him over in a sweet kind of way. Gar schöne Spiele spiel ich mit dir. So I really want to play lovely games with you. Okay, so now he's really trying to bring the boy over. Manch bunte Blumen sind an dem Strand. Some colorful flowers are on the shore. Meine Mutter hat manch gilden Gewand. My mother has some golden gowns. So he's trying to tell the boy, I've got all this lovely stuff over here if you want to come play with me, which is really creepy in the middle of the night. Of course, that's what we're going for here. That's the whole point of this. But it makes you wonder, like, what is he trying to bring him over for? What does he want from this boy that he's trying to say, look at all this fun stuff I have over here? So we go back to the son. Mein Vater, und hörst du nicht? So, my father, don't you hear? Was Erlkönig mir leise verspricht? So don't you hear what the Erlking is saying to me? So he's really freaking out. Fortunately, this boy is not that dumb. He's figuring out that he shouldn't be going over to this Erlking. And he's calling out to his father, like, don't you hear what he's saying to me? Like, he's calling me over here. He's trying to get me to go to him, and I don't want to go. He's scaring me. So then we switch back again to the father. Sei ruhig, bleibe ruhig, mein Kind. So be calm, stay calm, my child. In dürren Blättern säuselt der Wind. So in dry branches, the wind is whispering. So it's just the wind, it's just dry branches. You think you're hearing voices, but he's just kind of dismissing what his son is saying to him. So now we go back to the Erlking. Willst feiner Knabe du mit mir gehen? So do you want to come with me, fine child? Fine child? Yes, it's quite a fine child here. Meine Töchter sollen dich warten schön. So my daughters will gladly wait on you. Meine Töchter fühlen das nächtlichen Rhein. So my daughters lead a nightly dance. Und wiegen und tanzen und singen dich ein. So they dance and they sing and they will cradle you off to sleep, I guess. It doesn't really say to sleep, but I guess it's kind of implied, like, you know, if you're going to cradle a little boy, it's probably going to be to sleep. So he's kind of talking about, I have daughters that will wait upon you. Don't you want that? So then we go back to the boy again. Mein Vater, und siehst du nicht dort? So, my father, don't you see it over there? Erlkönigs Töchter am düstern Ort. The Erlking's daughter on the gloomy place over there. So now, before he was saying, don't you hear him? I can hear him talking to me. And now he's saying, don't you see it? It's like right there in front of you, because the father wasn't listening to what he could hear. So now he's going for, like, can you see them at least? So the father responds, mein Sohn, ich sehe es genau. Oh, my son, I do see it now. Es scheinen die alten Weiden so grau. Oh, I see it. The old willows over there are shining so gray. That's the little gloomy gray thing that you're seeing off in the distance. See, that's the really spooky thing about this piece, is the son is apparently seeing this Erlking, that we kind of hear bits and pieces about the Erlking, but it makes you wonder, what is he actually seeing in reality? What is the actual reality that's going on? Is the father actually right and there's nothing there and this boy is hallucinating this image? Is there actually an Erlking? And if so, why can't the father see it? Why is it only appearing to the son? It gets creepier and creepier as it goes along. Speaking of creepy, here comes the real kicker. Ich liebe dich, mit Reiz deine schöne Gestalt. So I love you. This is the Erlking talking again. I love you with your appealing, your alluring, your tempting face. Ooh, that's really creepy. Und bist du nicht willig? So brauch ich Gewalt. And if you are not willing, I will take you by force. Ooh, this is the first time the Erlking actually shows more of his true colors. Before, he was sweet, I've got these toys and fun games, and these girls you can play with, but if you are not willing, if I cannot bring you in here, I shall take you by force. Mein Vater, jetzt fasst mich an. So, my father, now he's touching me, he's grabbing me, he's trying to take a hold of me. Erlkönig hat mir ein Leids getan. The Erlking is bringing me great harm. He's trying to grab me. He's trying to take me. So again, like, what is going on? Because if the son is the only one who can see this Erlking and the father is kind of oblivious to it, what does that mean? How does that translate to the reality of what's going on between father and son? What does he mean, like he's touching him, he's grabbing him? So then for the last few lines, we switch back to the narrator again, who explains to the audience the final things that happen. Dem Vater grausitz, leitet geschwind. So the father is horrified, because, I mean, any parent would be, wouldn't they? If your child is in your arms screaming that somebody's grabbing them, and you're not seeing anything going on. So the father is horrified and he rides quickly, yes, trying to get home, right? Hält in Armen das ächzende Kind. So he's holding in his arms this groaning child. He's moaning and sobbing and crying, and he's just trying to get home as quickly as possible. Erreicht den Hof mit Mühe und Not. So he reaches the courtyard and he's troubled and he's distressed. He's stressing out, like, what is going on with my son? In seinen Armen, das Kind war tot. So in his arms, the child was dead. Yeah. So isn't that spooky? That's why I thought it was a good kind of story to tell for Halloween season, and a little classical music for the time of year that we're in. A father and son ride through the forest and is doing something to this child that's trying to take him away from his father and ends up killing him in the end. We never really find out what the Erlking wanted with the son, or why he needed the son, or what he was doing that ended up causing the son to die. That's kind of the fun and creepy part about it. You know, was it that the son was hallucinating and was just getting maybe sick, or something was causing him to die? Or was there actually an Erlking who can somehow bring and lure children into him, and I guess ends up killing them in the end? It's all quite very interesting. So I'm planning to do more videos like this in the future. Not every single week, but every now and then, where I'll just pick one song, one of my favorite songs, one that sounds nice, and I'll kind of go through it and analyze it like I did with this one, and kind of talk to you guys about what it is that's happening and just translating the lyrics for you. So if you like this video and you'd like to see more of it, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you next time. Bye.